"He's not just a stranger," she said, unaware. The man she flirted with was a ruthless mafia boss. The smell of burnt coffee and stale grease was Natalie Moore's constant companion. It clung to her apron, worked its way into her hair, and settled in her lungs long after she clocked out. At 11:30 on a Tuesday night, with rain lashing the windows of the Harborview Diner. That smell was the only thing keeping her upright. Her feet were two separate, agonizing aches at the ends of her legs. "Honey, you call this a full stack," a trucker barked from booth 4, gesturing to the 3 pancakes she'd delivered. "Looks more like a half-mast stack to me." Natalie forced the smile that paid her bills. "My apologies, sir. The cook's feeling a little light-handed tonight. Can I get you another coffee?" "You can get me the check. And take that coffee off it. Tastes like battery acid." She nodded, scooped up the offending mug, and dumped it, watching the black liquid spiral down the drain. It was the 10th or 11th complaint of the night. Tuesdays were always bad. People were too far from the optimism of the weekend and too close to the crushing weight of the week ahead. She finished wiping the counters, her gaze drifting to the corner booth. The one Kyle always claimed. He was there now, nursing a water glass he hadn't paid for, watching her. His presence felt like a damp cloth on the back of her neck. Kyle had been her high school mistake, a mistake that refused to graduate. He was all hollow swagger and cheap cologne, convinced that Harborview was his kingdom and she was its lost and found jewel. "You're almost done, Nat," he called out, his voice sliding over the diner's quiet hum. "Another hour. Kyle, kitchen closes at midnight. I clean till 1. She didn't look at him, focusing instead on refilling the sugar caddies. "Come on, I'll walk you home." "It's raining. I like the rain." She lied. He slid out of the booth, his worn leather jacket creaking. He was too close, invading the small space behind the counter she considered her own. Who was that guy earlier? The one in the suit? Natalie froze. He meant Mr. Henderson, a pharmaceutical rep who always left exactly 15%. A customer, Kyle. They pay for the food. It's a new concept. He was looking at you. He was looking at the menu. "Please, I have to work." He smiled, a tight, thin-lipped expression that never reached his eyes. It was a smile of ownership, and it made her stomach clench. "I'm just looking out for you. Nat, it's a rough neighborhood." "I know," she said, finally meeting his gaze, her voice dropping. "I've lived here my whole life. I know all the rough parts." He got the message. He held up his hands in mock surrender and backed away. "Fine, be that way. See you at home." He didn't mean his home. He meant her home. He'd stop by, bang on the door, and wake her mother, all under the guise of checking in. She watched him push through the glass doors, disappearing into the downpour. The tension drained out of her shoulders, leaving her exhausted. She leaned against the stainless steel counter, closing her eyes for just 1 second. The chime of the bell above the door snapped her back. Natalie sighed, pushing hair off her damp forehead. "Sorry, kitchen's closed. I can get you coffee and pie, but that's—" She stopped. The man standing just inside the doorway didn't look like he was here for pie. He was tall, dressed in a black wool overcoat that was so dark it seemed to drink the diner's weak fluorescent light. Rainwater dripped from the shoulders onto the linoleum. He wasn't just dressed in black. He was black, like a shadow detaching itself from the alley wall. He looked completely out of place, a wolf wandering into a petting zoo. He pulled off a pair of black leather gloves, tucking them into a pocket. His movements were slow, deliberate. When he looked up, she felt the air thicken. His eyes were cold, not just uninterested, but actively, deeply cold. They were the color of the harbor in January, a flat, hard gray. But when he spoke, his voice was the opposite. It was quiet, a low, smooth baritone that was almost soft. "Coffee, black, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble," she managed, grabbing a clean mug. "Go ahead and sit." He didn't take a booth. He slid onto one of the rotating stools at the counter, right in front of her. He shrugged off the heavy coat, revealing a perfectly tailored black suit and a simple white shirt. No tie. He laid his hands flat on the Formica counter. His nails were clean. On his right pinky, a simple, heavy gold ring. She poured the coffee, the same sludge the trucker had rejected. "Careful," she said, setting it down. "It's been on the burner a while. Might bite back." A flicker of something, amusement maybe, passed through his cold eyes. He didn't drink. He just looked at the mug, then at her. "Long night," he stated. It wasn't a question. You could say that. Natalie leaned against the counter opposite him, deciding to clean the espresso machine. The rhythmic hiss and clank of her work filled the silence. "You don't like him," the stranger said. Natalie stopped, rag in hand. "I'm sorry. The man who just left, the one in the leather jacket. You don't like him." She stiffened. "I don't really talk about my personal life with customers." "He's not a customer." He wrapped his long fingers around the warm mug, but still didn't drink. "He didn't pay." A small, sharp laugh escaped her. "You're observant, aren't you? I get paid to be." This time, she let her curiosity override her professionalism. "Oh yeah? And what is it you do that pays you to watch diner arguments?" "I'm in management," he said. He had a way of speaking that made every word sound final. "Management." She scrubbed a nozzle. "Well, as one manager to another, I manage this counter from 8 to 1. It's a tough gig. People are lonely, and they're angry about it, and they take it out on the person bringing them fries." "Is that what you think? People are angry because they're lonely?" She stopped working and looked at him. Really looked at him. And he was handsome, she realized, in a severe, dangerous way. High cheekbones, a strong jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite, and a mouth that looked like it hadn't smiled in a decade, but his eyes were fixed on her, genuinely interested. "I think," Natalie said slowly, drying her hands, "that people are just tired. They're tired of the rain, tired of the bills, tired of waiting for something better that never shows up. It makes them mean. It makes them small." "And you?" he asked, his voice dropping even lower. "Are you tired, Natalie?" Her name was stitched in red script on her uniform. He'd read it. Still, hearing it in that voice sent a strange shiver through her. "I'm too tired to be tired," she admitted. "Most nights I'm just running, trying to stay one step ahead of the silence." The silence. Yeah, that quiet you get when you're finally alone, when there's no TV on and no trucks rattling past, when you finally have to think about everything. I hate that. She'd said too much. She was talking to a complete stranger, a man who looked like he carried the silence around with him. She flushed, turning back to the machine. "I sound crazy. Sorry, it's the end of the shift." "You don't sound crazy," he said. "You sound honest." They fell into a quiet that was different from the one she feared. It was comfortable. The rain hammered the roof, and the coffee pot gurgled its last breath. "It's easier, sometimes, with a stranger," she found herself saying, mostly to the stainless steel. "You don't owe them anything. They don't know your baggage. You're just two people in a room, waiting out the rain. No offense," she added, glancing at him. "You seem kind, but you're just a stranger." His expression didn't change, but his eyes intensified. He seemed to be memorizing her face. "No offense taken," he said. He finally lifted the mug and took a sip of the terrible coffee. He didn't even wince. He just drank it as if it were the finest wine. He finished the whole cup, then set it down with a quiet click. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded clip of money. He peeled off a single bill and laid it on the counter. Natalie's eyes widened. It was $100 bill. "Hey," she said, her voice cracking. "I can't. The coffee is $2. "For the coffee," he said, standing up, "and the honesty." He shrugged back into his heavy, dry-looking coat. He had it buttoned before she could protest again. "Wait," she called out. He paused at the door, hand on the handle. You read my name tag. I'm Natalie." He looked at her over his shoulder. The coldness was back, but it was different. It was a shield, not a weapon. "Vince," he said. Just Vince. He pushed the door open, and the bell chimed. The storm outside swallowed him instantly. Natalie stood there for a full minute, her heart hammering against her ribs. She picked up the $100 bill. It was crisp. It was real. It was more than she made in 2 shifts. She clutched it in her hand all the way through cleanup, her mind replaying the conversation, his eyes, his voice, the strange, settled quiet he brought with him. Vince. She couldn't shake the feeling. She thought about him all night, across town. The black sedan moved through the flooded streets of Harborview with silent, heavy grace. Vincent Romano sat in the back, the rain blurring the city lights into watercolor streaks. His driver, Marco, a man built of solid, quiet loyalty, kept his eyes on the road. The diner, Vincent said, his voice flat. The Harborview. Boss, been there 50 years. Independently owned, barely scraping by. Marco recited the facts without needing to check a device. The waitress, Natalie, Marco nodded. Natalie Moore, 26, lives 3 blocks from the diner. Mother, Mary Moore. Medical discharge from the textile mill, bad lungs, father's gone. She's the sole provider. Vincent looked at his own hands, resting on his knee. He thought of her, scrubbing the chrome, her shoulders slumped with a weariness that went bone deep. And the man, Vincent said, his voice tightening. The one in the leather jacket. Kyle Donahue. Small-time bookie. Smaller-time muscle. Thinks he's tougher than he is. He's been hanging around her since high school. Seems to think he has a claim on her. Vincent turned his gaze back to the window. He watched the ruined docks of Harborview slide by. He saw her face. You're just a stranger. Find out everything else. Vincent said. Her debts, her mother's doctors, who she owes, who's squeezing her. I want to know every anchor tied to her. And Donahue? Marco asked. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Just find out, and keep your distance. I don't want her seeing any of you. I don't want her scared. Yes, boss. Vincent leaned his head back, closing his eyes. He hadn't intended to stop. He was supposed to be checking on a warehouse, one that fronted the Navarro crew's territory. But he had seen her through the window, arguing with Donahue. He had seen the defiant tilt of her chin, and he had, for reasons he couldn't explain and didn't trust, told Marco to pull over. He hadn't been Vince in a very, very long time. It was almost 2 a.m. when Natalie climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. The air in the hallway was thick with the smell of boiled cabbage and old plumbing. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts on her door, sliding inside as quietly as possible. Natty? She sighed, her shoulders slumping. It's me, Ma. Go back to sleep. She walked into the tiny, cluttered living room. Her mother, Mary, was asleep in the recliner, the television muttering a low-budget infomercial. An oxygen tube was looped over her ears, and the gentle, rhythmic pump of the concentrator was the apartment's heartbeat. Natalie bent down and kissed her mother's papery cheek. Mary's breathing was shallow, a wet, crackling sound that terrified Natalie more than anything else in the world. She went to the kitchen, which was really just a corner of the living room. On the small table, a stack of envelopes, a pink one from the power company, a white one from the landlord, a pale blue one from the medical supply company, all marked past due or final notice. This was the silence she'd told the stranger about. She sat at the table, pulling the $100 bill from her pocket. She smoothed it on the worn wood. It looked foreign, too clean for this apartment. It would cover the power bill. It wouldn't touch the rent. It wouldn't refill the 3 prescriptions sitting empty on the counter. She was so tired. She dropped her head into her hands, the rough texture of her apron scratching her face. She just wanted one good night's sleep. One morning where she didn't wake up with the immediate, choking taste of panic. A hard, sudden knock rattled the door. Natalie shot up, her heart leaping into her throat. Mary jerked awake in the chair, coughing. "Who is it?" Natalie whispered, moving to the door. "It's me, Nat, open up." Kyle. "Go away, Kyle, you'll wake my mother." "She's already awake, I heard her. Come on, I just want to talk." "We have nothing to talk about. Go home." The knock became a bang, insistent and aggressive. "Natalie, open the damn door. I saw you counting that tip." "Who was he?" "Natalie, honey, just Just see what he wants." Mary wheezed from the chair. "Don't make him angry." Natalie's hands trembled with fury. She was trapped. She undid the locks and opened the door a crack, blocking the opening with her body. Kyle shoved it open, sending her stumbling back. He smelled of stale beer and the rain. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed, keeping her voice low. "What's wrong with me?" He advanced on her, backing her toward the kitchen. "I wait for you. I offer to walk you home. And you're in there, flirting with some rich bastard in a suit, giving him smiles you don't give me? He was a customer. I was doing my job." $100 job? His eyes were wide, jealous. "What'd you do, Nat? Offer him the early bird special under the table?" "Get out," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Get out of my house. This dump." He laughed. "You're so much better than this." "Nat, you're better than me. Is that it? You think that suit is going to save you?" He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her bicep. "You're mine, Natalie. You've always been mine. You're not going anywhere. Let go of me, Kyle." "Is that him?" Mary cried out, clutching her chest. "Kyle, you leave her be." The distraction was enough. Natalie ripped her arm free and shoved him. "Get out! Don't you ever come back here." Kyle's face darkened. He raised a hand, and for a second, she thought he would hit her. He saw the look in her eyes, not fear, but pure, unadulterated hatred, and he hesitated. "Fine," he spat. "Stay here. Rot with her. But don't think that guy is coming back for you. He was just slumming." He slammed the door on his way out. The frame shuddered. Natalie leaned against the wall, her legs giving out. She slid to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. She wouldn't cry. Crying was a luxury. Across the street, parked in the mouth of a dark alley, the black sedan sat engine off. Vincent Romano watched Kyle Donahue storm out of the apartment building, his face twisted in a mask of petty rage. "Boss," Marco said, his voice a low rumble. Vincent said nothing. His fury was a cold, sharp thing. It wasn't the hot, sloppy anger of the man on the sidewalk. It was the precise, still frozen point of an icicle. He watched Kyle kick a trash can, sending garbage spilling onto the wet pavement, before stalking off down the street. Vincent's gaze lifted to the third-floor window. The one he knew was hers. He touched her, Vincent said. It was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "Say the word. Boss, I'll have his hands broken before the sun comes up." Vincent watched the window. He wanted to go up there. He wanted to kick the door in himself and make sure she was safe, but he knew what she would see. She wouldn't see Vince, the quiet customer. She would see the man he was. The man Kyle, in his ignorance, had correctly identified. "No," Vincent said, his voice tight. "Not yet. He's a symptom. I need to know the disease. But Marco, follow him. Make sure he goes home, and make sure he doesn't double back. Have the car stay on this building until sunrise. Nobody else goes in." "Yes, boss." Marco got out, melting into the shadows. Vincent stayed in the car, alone in the back seat, up in the apartment. Natalie finally pushed herself off the floor. She checked on her mother, gave her a glass of water, and tucked the thin blanket around her. She went to her own small bedroom, the one that used to be a pantry. She didn't turn on the light. She walked to the window, pulling back the thin cotton curtain. She looked down at the empty street. The rain had softened to a drizzle. The world was gray and quiet. She thought about the diner, about the man with the cold eyes and the soft voice. The $100 felt like a burn in her pocket. He was the only good thing that had happened to her in months, and Kyle had already found a way to make it dirty. She leaned her forehead against the cool glass, unaware of the figure standing in the deep shadow of the alley across the way, watching her silhouette, unaware of the man she called a stranger, the man who was silently, patiently, watching over the only honest thing he'd seen in a decade. 3 days later, he came back. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the lull between the lunch rush and the early bird dinner crowd. The diner was empty, save for an old man reading a newspaper in a back booth. Natalie was refilling salt shakers, her mind a million miles away, calculating the cost of her mother's new prescription versus the late fee on the gas bill. The bell chimed. She looked up, and her heart did a strange, painful little flip. It was him. Vince. This time, he wore no overcoat. Just the black suit trousers and a dark gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her month's rent. He looked softer, less like a shadow, but the severity was still there, in the set of his shoulders and the sharp line of his jaw. He looked younger than she'd first thought, maybe in his mid-30s, but his eyes were ancient. He took the same stool. "You came back," she said, blushing. It sounded stupid. "You're here. It's my job." She grabbed the coffee pot. "Same as last time? Or can I offer you something that won't strip paint?" "I'll try the new stuff," he said. A small, almost smile touched the corner of his mouth. She poured him a fresh cup. "So," she said, wiping a counter that was already clean, "you're in management. What kind of things? Do you manage?" He sipped the coffee. He seemed to actually taste it this time. "People, mostly. I make sure they're doing what they're supposed to, that they're not causing problems. And when they do cause problems, you solve them. A problem solver sounds vague. I find it's better to be vague." He looked at her, his gray eyes holding hers. "And you, Natalie, still running from the silence?" She stopped wiping. He remembered. The fact that he'd listened, really listened, undid her. The past 3 days had been a blur of anxiety. The $100 had vanished into the black hole of her mother's medical bills, and the stack of envelopes had only grown. "The silence is winning," she admitted, her voice low. She hadn't meant to say it. "What's the problem?" he asked. "What's not?" She laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "It's my mom. She's not getting better. The doctors use words I don't understand, and the insurance company pretends they don't either, and I'm stuck. I'm just stuck." She hadn't talked like this to anyone, not to her friends, who had their own problems, and certainly not to Kyle. "I wanted to go back to school," she whispered, staring at the countertop. "I was halfway through a community college nursing program when she got bad. I thought I could help people. I wanted to be the person who walks into the room and actually knows what to do. You know, not just the person who brings the pills with a glass of water." She shook her head, embarrassed. "But that costs money. And this job pays for the pills. So here I am, stuck, and I feel guilty. I feel guilty for wanting to leave, and I feel guilty for staying and hating it. It's a trap." He was quiet for a long time, just watching her. He wasn't judging her. He wasn't offering cheap solutions. He was just bearing witness. "You're not stuck," he said finally. "You're anchored. It's different. An anchor holds you in a storm." She looked at him, startled. "That's a strangely beautiful way of looking at it. It's just the truth." She felt a genuine smile break across her face, the first in what felt like a lifetime. It was small, but it was real. "Well, Mr. Problem Solver, you're pretty good at this. Better than just a stranger." And then she laughed. It was a real laugh, bubbling up from her chest, full of surprise and relief. Vincent watched the laugh transform her. It lit her up from the inside, chasing the exhaustion from her eyes, if only for a second or deep. He felt a strange, unfamiliar tightening in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in over a decade. It was a dangerous, proprietary, almost protective hunger. He wanted to keep her laughing. He wanted to be the only one who could make her laugh. He wanted to destroy everything in the world that kept her from it. The moment was broken by the diner door slamming open. 2 men stumbled in, laughing too loudly. They were dressed in cheap tracksuits, their faces slick with rain and arrogance. They looked around the empty diner, their eyes landing on Natalie. They shoved into the booth nearest the counter. Natalie's smile vanished. The professional mask snapped back into place. "Afternoon, gentlemen, menus?" "Forget the menu, sweetheart," the first one said. He had a wiry, weasel-like face. "Just bring us 2 beers. Sorry, we only serve beer with food. Diner policy." "Come on." The second one, larger and slower, whined. "Don't be like that. We're good for it. It's not about the money. It's the license. I can get you coffee, or the meatloaf special." The weasel-faced man leaned back, putting his muddy boots up on the vinyl seat. He looked past her, at Vincent. "What's the matter? Your boyfriend don't like you talking to us?" He looked at Vincent. "Hey, mister, suit, you gonna buy your girl a new apron? That one's got a stain." Natalie felt, rather than saw, the change beside her. The air temperature at the counter dropped 20 degrees. Vincent didn't move a muscle. But the man who had been Vince disappeared. The stillness that had been calm was now lethal. It was the stillness of a shark rising to the surface. His hands, which had been resting loosely on the counter, slowly, deliberately, curled into fists. His eyes, fixed on the man in the booth, went flat and dead. He had stopped breathing. He was a trigger. Waiting to be pulled, he started to shift, to rise from the stool. "Oh, he's not my boyfriend," Natalie said suddenly, her voice bright and sharp. The two men looked at her. She turned to Vincent, putting a hand lightly on his forearm. His muscle was rock hard, tense to spring. "He's my father. He's just very protective. Aren't you, Dad?" She winked at him. A tiny, audacious, brilliant wink. Vincent froze. He looked from her face, brimming with false cheer, back to the two thugs. The thugs looked confused. "Your father?" Weaselface sneered. "That's right," Natalie said, picking up the coffee pot. "And he taught me not to take crap from boys who still have to ask their moms for lunch money." She smiled, a dazzling, terrifying smile. "Now, meatloaf. Yes or no? 'Cause I'm not asking again." The thugs, faced with her sudden, bizarre aggression and the silent, murderous man at the counter, faltered. "Forget this," the big one muttered, sliding out. "Let's go to O'Malley's." "Yeah, this place sucks anyway." Weaselface got up, trying to look tough. He kicked the leg of the table as he left. They shoved their way back out the door, the bell chiming mockingly. Natalie let out a breath she'd been holding for a full minute. Her hand was still on his arm. She quickly pulled it away. "Sorry about that," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Harborview's finest." Vincent was still looking at the door. The lethal coldness hadn't receded. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice a low growl. "Done what? My job? It's fine. They're harmless. They're not harmless." He turned to her, his eyes still dark. "You were good, but you shouldn't have had to be." He stood, pulling a $50 bill from his pocket and dropping it on the counter. "For the coffee and the show." "Vince, wait." But he was already out the door. He found them in the alley 2 blocks down, trying to light cigarettes in the damp air. Vincent stepped from the street into the narrow passage, blocking their only way out. "This place sucks, huh?" Vincent said. The two men spun around. "What the hell you want?" Weaselface said, trying to sound tough. Vincent walked toward them slowly. "I want you to understand something. You don't go back to that diner. You don't look at her. You don't talk to her. You don't breathe the air near her again." Weaselface laughed, but it was a nervous sound. He pulled a small switchblade from his pocket, the click echoing off the brick. "You're a long way from home, old man. This ain't your neighborhood. This is Harborview. This is Navarro turf now." Vincent stopped. "Navarro?" The name hit him like a punch. The rival crew, pushing up from the south, trying to take his ports. He had thought they were just rumors, just small-time smuggling. But this was different. This was sloppy. This was disrespectful. This was on his street. "Navarro, huh?" Vincent said. He unbuttoned his suit jacket. "Then you can take a message back to him." He moved faster than Weaselface could even track. He broke the man's wrist first, the one holding the knife. The snap of the bone was louder than the clatter of the blade on the pavement. The man screamed. Vincent grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall, silencing the sound. The big one just stared, his mouth open. Vincent held Weaselface against the brick, his feet dangling. "This," he whispered, his voice pure ice, "is my turf. It has always been my turf, and you and your idiot boss are trespassing. Tell him. Vincent Romano sends his regards." He dropped the man, who collapsed in a heap. Clutching his shattered wrist, Vincent turned to the big one, who was shaking, his hands up. "Get him out of here," Vincent said. "And if I ever see either of you again, I won't be as kind." He walked away, adjusting his cuffs, leaving the two men in the alley. The message had been sent, but the problem, he now realized, was much bigger than two thugs. When Natalie got home, the pink envelope was taped to her door. Final notice to pay or quit. She was 14 days behind. $450. She went inside. The paper crumpled in her fist. Her mother was asleep in the recliner. The oxygen machine pumped its steady, sad rhythm. She had $112 in her pocket. She sat at the table, staring at the wall. She felt the tears coming, hot and angry. The knock on the door made her jump. It was Kyle. She knew the rhythm. She opened it, too tired to fight. "Hey, Nat," he said, his smile greasy. He was trying to be charming. "Heard you had some trouble with the landlord." "How?" "Marge in 2B likes to talk. Come on, let me in." He pushed past her. His hand was wrapped in a grimy bandage. "What happened to your hand?" she asked, not really caring. Nothing. Slipped on some stairs." "Stupid." He looked around the apartment, then at her. "Look, Nat, I know things are tight. I can help. I came into some money." "I don't want your money, Kyle." "It ain't a gift." He stepped closer. $450, right? I got it, right here." He patted his jacket. "It's yours. You gotta remember who takes care of you. You gotta stop being so cold to me. We could go out, like old times." His eyes roamed over her, and she felt disgusting. He wanted to own her. The money was just a leash. "No, Kyle." "No? Just no?" His face tightened. "I'm offering to save you. I'm offering to help your sick mother. And you say no? I'd rather live on the street than be your charity case. Now get out. You stupid—" His anger flared, fast and ugly. He'd been rejected, and his pride couldn't take it. "You're still thinking about that suit, aren't you? You think he's coming back? This has nothing to do with him. This has to do with you. You ungrateful." He slapped her. The sound was sharp. A gunshot in the tiny room. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek exploding with a white-hot, stinging pain. She stumbled back, hitting the wall, the framed photo of her parents rattling. Her mother gasped from the chair. "Kyle." Kyle looked at his hand, then at the red mark blooming on Natalie's face. He looked shocked. Then a small, cruel smile of satisfaction touched his lips. "You should have taken the money, Nat." He turned and left, slamming the door. Natalie stayed pressed against the wall. She didn't cry. The pain in her face was nothing compared to the cold, dead humiliation in her chest. That night, Vincent's men reported the incident, the slap, the threat. Vincent found Kyle at 3 a.m, unlocking the door to his own squalid apartment. This time, there was no warning. Vincent stepped out of the stairwell shadows. Kyle turned, his eyes wide with fear. "Hey, man, I don't want—" Vincent hit him once in the throat, a hard, precise chop that cut off his air. As Kyle gagged, clawing at his neck, Vincent grabbed his left hand, the one he'd hit her with. He pinned it against the brick wall. She said no. Vincent whispered. He took Kyle's middle and ring fingers and bent them back until they snapped. A sickening, wet crack echoed in the stairwell. Kyle's scream was a choked, strangled gurgle. Vincent wasn't done. He drove his boot onto Kyle's knee, dislocating it. Kyle collapsed. Vincent crouched beside him, his face an inch from Kyle's, who was sobbing and hyperventilating. "You will never get within 100 yards of her again. You will never speak her name. If you do, I will not break your hands. I will cut them off. Do you understand me?" Kyle, crying, managed a frantic nod. Vincent stood. He was perfectly calm. He hadn't broken a sweat. He just solved problems. The next day, Natalie heard from Marge in 2B that Kyle Donahue had been mugged. Broke his hand in 3 places, they said, and his leg, probably welched on a bet. Natalie went to her shift, the yellowish-purple bruise on her cheek hidden, badly, with makeup. She felt sick, and she felt a dark, terrible, secret relief. She was safe from Kyle. For the first time in years, she knew, with absolute certainty, he would never bother her again. She didn't know who did it, but she was grateful. That night, the rain returned, a soft, misty drizzle. When she clocked out at 1, he was there. Vince, standing just outside the diner door, under the awning. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "It's late. I'll walk you," he said. It wasn't an offer. They walked in silence. The sound of their footsteps on the wet pavement was the only sound. The streets were empty. It wasn't a comfortable silence. It was charged. She was hyper-aware of him, of the size of him, of the way he moved beside her, an effortless, predatory grace. She felt utterly, completely safe. They reached her building, stopping under the single, flickering street lamp that buzzed overhead. He looked at her, his face half in shadow. His gaze fell to her cheek, where the makeup had worn off, revealing the dark, ugly bruise. His expression hardened, the coldness returned, but it was different. It was an anger for her, not at her. He lifted his hand, and she flinched. He stopped, his hand hovering, then, very slowly. He finished the motion, but he didn't touch the bruise. His thumb, warm and slightly rough, brushed the skin just beside it, a touch so gentle it was agonizing. "He won't do it again," he said. It was a vow. She stared at him, her heart hammering. "How did you... He won't do it again," he repeated. She searched his eyes, looking for the man who brought her coffee, but she saw the man who had looked at the thugs, the man who solved problems. They were the same person. He leaned in. It was slow, giving her every chance to pull away. She couldn't. She was tired of running. His lips touched hers. It was tender, it was hesitant, it was just a soft pressure, a question. And then, when she didn't pull back, when her own hand came up to rest on his chest, the kiss changed. It deepened. It wasn't hungry. It was desperate. It was breathless and unplanned, and it tasted of the rain and the city and something ancient and dangerous. It was the safest she had ever felt. She pulled back, her forehead resting against his. She was trembling. "I don't even know your real name," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "You're not Vince." "Not really." He didn't deny it. He brushed the wet hair from her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw, staying clear of the bruise. A small, sad, and very real smile touched his mouth. "Maybe you shouldn't." He lingered for a second, his eyes memorizing her face. Then he stepped back, turned, and disappeared into the rain. It became their secret, not the kiss, but the quiet after. Vince started appearing in the daylight. He would be at the counter at 3 in the afternoon, the diner empty, a cup of coffee he barely touched sitting in front of him. He'd just watch her work. He learned the rhythm of her movements, the way she tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear, the small, tired sigh she gave when she thought no one was looking. He never stayed long, just 20 minutes, an hour, a pocket of silence in her chaotic day. Sometimes he would be waiting outside when her shift ended. They would walk, not always to her apartment. They'd walk toward the docks, breathing in the cold, salty air, watching the container ships slide by in the dark. He spoke very little about himself, but he was a masterful listener. He asked about her nursing books, the ones she kept under her bed. He asked about her mother, about what she liked to watch on television, what she liked to eat. He sent a package, not flowers, not to the diner. It was delivered to her apartment. Inside were 3 thick, expensive-looking medical textbooks on pulmonary care and a quiet, electric humidifier. There was no note. When she saw him next, she was breathless. "The books. The machine. Vince, I can't accept that. It's too much. Your mother needs to breathe," he said, as if it were the simplest, most obvious fact in the world. "And you need to study." Her friends at the diner noticed. Of course they noticed. "Okay, spill," said Maria, her closest friend at the diner, a woman with 3 kids and no patience. They were in the back, rolling silverware into paper napkins. "Who is the man in black? He looks like he eats guys like Kyle for breakfast. He's just a friend, Maria. He's nice." "Nice. Nat, nice is Mister. Henderson, who tips 15%, that man, he's something else. He's intense. He watches you like he's starving and you're the last piece of bread on earth. It's not normal. It gives me the creeps. He's not creepy, Natalie defended, more sharply than she intended. He's quiet, and he listens. And after what happened with Kyle, he makes me feel... What? Safe, Natalie finished, her voice dropping. I've never felt safe before. Not really. He makes me feel solid, like the world can't just knock me over anymore. Maria sighed, stopping her work. Honey, men who look like that don't just make you feel safe. They're the ones who make the world dangerous in the first place. Just be careful. He's got secrets. I can see it in his eyes. Natalie just nodded, but the warning slid off her. Maria didn't understand. She hadn't been there when he'd touched her bruised face with a gentleness she didn't know existed. One Friday night, after a brutal shift, he was waiting. The black sedan was parked a block away, but he was on foot, standing under the same flickering street lamp where they'd first kissed. I don't want to go home, she said, the words tumbling out. I'm so tired of that apartment. I'm tired of the smell of sickness and old cabbage. I just want one night, 1 hour, to be somewhere else. He looked at her for a long moment. Okay, he said. He took her hand. His was large and warm, enveloping hers completely. He led her away from her street, toward the newer, taller buildings that overlooked the industrial side of the harbor. He stopped at a steel service door on the side of a 12-story condominium, a building she'd only ever seen from a distance. He didn't use a key. He simply opened it. Are we allowed to be here? She whispered as he led her into the dark, concrete stairwell. I'm in management, remember? He said, his voice echoing slightly. I'm allowed everywhere. They climbed, 9 flights, 10. Her legs were burning, but he was barely breathing. He pushed open a final, heavy door, and the city wind hit them. They were on the roof. It was vast, flat, and empty, save for a few large air conditioning units. But the view stole her breath. Harbor View was spread out below them, a carpet of glittering, fractured lights. She could see the black, oily ribbon of the river, the skeletal cranes of the port, the red taillights of cars streaming over the bridge. It was beautiful. It was the first time she had ever seen her broken city as something beautiful. How did you know about this? She breathed, walking to the chest-high parapet. I come here, he said, standing beside her, to think. It's quiet. You're kind of quiet, she said, smiling at him. The wind whipped a strand of hair across her face, and he reached out to tuck it back. His fingers lingered on her cheek. This time, she didn't flinch. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. He was so close. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, a solid, comforting presence in the cold night air. Natalie, he murmured. She opened her eyes. He was looking at her with that same intense hunger Maria had described. But it wasn't just hunger. It was sadness. It was a deep, aching loneliness that mirrored her own. He lowered his head, and his lips met hers. This kiss was different. It wasn't the hesitant, rain-soaked kiss of their first meeting. This was a claim. His touch was gentle, his hand cupping her jaw as if she were made of glass. But the kiss itself was firm, deep, and knowing. It was a kiss that owned her, that searched her, that poured all of his unspoken words into her. Her body ignited. A tremor ran through her, a combination of pure, terrified anticipation and a desperate, aching need. She clutched the lapels of his suit jacket, her knuckles white, pulling him closer. She felt him tremble in response, a low groan rumbling in his chest, his other arm wrapped around her waist, crushing her against him, and the world dissolved into the roar of the wind and the firm, insistent pressure of his mouth when he finally, slowly, pulled back. They were both breathless. Her forehead rested against his chest, her heart hammering. "Vince," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What are you doing to me?" "I don't know," he answered, his own voice rough. I should stay away from you." "Don't," she said, looking up at him, her eyes pleading. "Please, just Tell me the truth. I need to know. What is it you really do? What kind of management?" He tensed. His gaze left hers, lifting to scan the city below them, the city that was his. He was quiet for a full minute. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, devoid of the passion from a moment before. "I'm in charge of people," he said, his eyes on the distant port. "A lot of people, my family. We've run this harbor for a long time. We keep things in order. We move things. We protect our own." He turned back to her, his face a hard, unreadable mask in the dim light. "And sometimes I make enemies." Natalie processed this. Enemies, family, running the harbor. It sounded big. It sounded important, but she filtered it through her own reality. Enemies, she asked? Like business rivals? Like those jerks in the diner? Like Kyle? She saw a flicker in his eyes. He could have told her. He could have said the name Navarro. He could have explained the blood that had been spilled for the very ground they were standing on. But he looked at her face, still so full of a hope he hadn't known he'd put there. And he made a choice. "Yes," he said. Like that, she let out a breath, a small, relieved smile touching her lips. "Okay," she said, brushing it off. "Business. I get that. Just don't make any enemies who are scarier than my landlord. All right?" He didn't smile. He just pulled her back against him, burying his face in her hair, and held her, his heart aching with the lie. 2 nights later, Vincent sat in the back room of a Sicilian restaurant that smelled of garlic and old wine. The room was soundproofed. Marco stood by the door. "They're not just sloppy, boss," Marco said, his voice grim. "They're arrogant. The word from our man inside is that the Navarro family is planning a full-scale move. They're going to hit the No. 7 warehouse. This Friday." Vincent swirled the brandy in his glass. "No. 7 is electronics. They want to steal televisions?" "No," Marco said. "They want the warehouse, but they're smart. They're going to plant 2 kilos of their own product and then make an anonymous tip to the Harborview PD. They want us raided. They want our operation crippled and our name in the papers. They want to frame us." Vincent's hand tightened on the glass. The Navarros weren't just pushing turf. They were trying to burn his whole world down, and they were using the police as their matches. "They think we're asleep," Vincent said, his voice a low growl. "They think I've gone soft." He thought of Natalie, of the rooftop. Maria was right. He had gone soft. "They think you're distracted," Marco said quietly. Vincent's head snapped up. "The car," Marco said. "The one that followed her. It was a Navarro scout. We confirmed it." Vincent didn't need to ask what confirmed meant. And he wasn't just watching her. He was watching you. They know she's important. They're watching her to get a read on you, boss, to see your patterns. The room went very, very cold. They hadn't been following her to threaten her. They had been following her to study him. They had used her as bait. "Where is the car now?" Vincent asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Parked 2 blocks from her street. Same man. He's watching your men, the ones you put on her building." Vincent stood. "Get the car. I'll ride with you. Boss, it's better if—" "Now, Marco." Natalie was walking home from the bus stop, her nursing books heavy in her bag. The humidifier had worked. Her mother was breathing easier, and for the first time in months, they'd watched a whole movie together. Natalie felt light. She felt possible. She turned onto her street, and she saw it. The same black car, parked. Not Vince's car. This one was a duller black, a different model. It was parked in the same spot it had been before. Her blood ran cold. The lightness vanished, replaced by a choking, metallic fear. "He's watching you to get a read on me." She didn't know the words, but she felt the truth of it. This was because of Vince. She fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking. She could feel the man's eyes on her. She wanted to run, but she was frozen, just as she was about to jam the key in her apartment building's main door. A second car, Vince's gleaming black sedan, screeched around the corner. It blocked the other car, pinning it against the curb. Vince was out of the passenger side before the car had even stopped. He was not Vince. This was not the man who kissed her on rooftops. This was a force of nature. This was a king. He ripped the driver's door of the other car open. He dragged the man out in a single, violent motion and slammed him against the car's roof. "You watched her?" Vincent roared, his voice echoing down the empty street. "You put your eyes on her?" He hit the man. It wasn't a punch. It was a bludgeon, a brutal, open-handed strike that snapped the man's head back. Vincent grabbed him by the shirt and slammed him against the brick wall of her building. "Who told you? Who sent you?" The man, blood pouring from his nose, just whimpered. Natalie stood frozen, her keys still in her hand, watching in abject horror. Vincent hit him again. "I will end you. I will wipe your entire bloodline off this map. Boss, not here." Marco was out of the driver's side, pulling at Vincent's arm. "The window, she's watching." Vincent froze. His fist was raised. He slowly, very slowly turned his head. He saw her standing there, pale, shaking, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. He had done the one thing he swore he never would. He had brought the monster to her doorstep. He let the man go, who slumped to the pavement. Vincent didn't look at him. He didn't look at Marco, and he just looked at Natalie. His face was a mask of rage and shame and a terrible, terrible pain. "Natalie?" He breathed. She whimpered, turned, and ran inside, the door slamming shut behind her. Vincent stood on the pavement, his chest heaving. He turned to Marco. "Get him in the car. Take him to the warehouse. Get 2 more men on this building. Tell them to be invisible. I don't care how— Go!" Marco shoved the bloody man into the back of the sedan and sped off. Vincent was left alone on the street. He looked up at her window. The third one from the left, the light was off. He had terrified her. He had broken everything. He didn't go home. He went to the warehouse. He dealt with the scout. He dealt with the plans for the Navarro raid. The anger was cold now, precise. He gave orders. He set a trap of his own. It was almost 4 a.m. when he finally found himself outside her door. He was shaking. Not from the cold. He was covered in sweat, his own blood, and the blood of the scout. He had to see her. He had to know she was— He didn't even know what— He knocked. A soft, hesitant tap. The door opened a crack. She was there, in an old t-shirt and pajama pants, her face pale. "Vince," she whispered. He pushed the door open. Stumbling in, he looked broken. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was torn and smeared with blood. His knuckles were raw and split open. A deep cut wept blood over his right eye. He wasn't the invincible, terrifying man from the street. He was just a man, bloodied and shaken and looking at her with a desperate, haunted expression. "My God," she breathed. "What happened?" He leaned against the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor, his head in his hands. "Bar fight," he rasped. Some idiots didn't know when to stop." She stared at him. The lie was so thin it was transparent. A bar fight? He just dismantled a man on her sidewalk, but she saw the look in his eyes. He was begging her to believe it. She didn't argue. She ran to the bathroom and came back with her small first aid kit, her hands trembling so badly she could barely open it. She knelt in front of him. This is going to sting," she said, her voice a whisper. She took a cotton ball with antiseptic and gently, so gently, began to clean the cut over his eye. He flinched, hissing, but he didn't pull away. He just watched her. His gaze was raw, stripped of all its defenses. "Your hands," she said, taking his battered, bloody knuckles. She cleaned them, her touch feather-light. "I haven't let anyone in," he said, his voice rough and broken. "Not for a long time. Not like this. It's not safe. Natalie, I knew it wasn't safe. Vince, I put this on you," he continued, his voice cracking. "I put all of this on you. I should have stayed away." She finished bandaging his hand. She cupped his face, her small, trembling hands holding his. "You're the only one who ever made me feel safe," she whispered, the tears finally welling in her eyes. "I don't care about the rest. I don't care." He looked at her, his dark, pained eyes searching hers, and then he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was raw, and desperate, and full of all the violence and fear of the night. It was a drowning man's kiss, and she was his only heir. He pulled her onto his lap, his hands tangling in her hair, his mouth bruising hers. She kissed him back with equal desperation, her fear melting into a fierce, protective need. He was right. It wasn't safe. And she didn't care. He stood, lifting her as if she weighed nothing, and carried her from the living room into her tiny, dark bedroom. He laid her on the bed, his body covering hers, his movements urgent, almost frantic. "Natalie," he breathed against her neck. "Tell me to stop. Please. Don't," she whispered, her arms locking around his back. "Don't you dare stop." Their lovemaking was not the gentle exploration of the rooftop. It was slow, but it was intense. It was a collision. It was built on the shaky, terrified, mutual trust of two people who had just seen the darkness and were choosing to hold on to each other anyway. It was a frantic, desperate, and deeply intimate act of defiance. Later, in the pre-dawn quiet, she lay beside him. The oxygen machine in the next room was the only sound. Her fingers, brave in the dark, traced the contours of his back. She felt them, raised. White lines, old scars, some were thin and sharp, like knives. One, near his shoulder blade, was a puckered, ugly circle. She traced the circular scar. "A bar fight," she whispered. He tensed, but he didn't pull away. He captured her hand, lacing his fingers with hers, and brought it to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "No," he said, his voice quiet in the dark. "Not a bar fight." He said nothing else. He didn't have to. She held his hand, her fingers tracing the map of violence she would never understand, and knew that her friend Maria was right. He was dangerous, and he was hers, and she would never, ever be safe again. The war started quietly, not with gunshots, but with silence. The city held its breath. The nights Vincent spent in her tiny bedroom became less frequent, then stopped. The walks along the docks were replaced by hurried, whispered phone calls at 4 a.m, his voice rough and distant. "I can't tonight. Natalie, is everything okay? It's work. It's complicated." He was still Vince, but the walls were going back up. The man who had shared her bed, who had let her trace his scars, was retreating, pulling away layer by layer until he was once again the man in the dark suit, the stranger at the counter. He was colder, his eyes distracted, his touch brief and tense. The softness she had found in him, the vulnerability she had tended to, was being encased in ice. She saw it in the news first, a small article, buried on page 6 of the Harborview Ledger. An accidental fire at a warehouse near the port. A few days later, a known union official was reported missing. Police cars, usually absent from her side of town, were suddenly everywhere, their blue and red lights painting the alleys at night. Natalie felt the shift in the air. The city was braced for a storm, and the man she loved was at the center of it. "You're hiding something from me," she finally accused him. They were in his car, parked a block from the diner, the engine idling. It was the first time she'd seen him in person in 5 days. "I'm busy," he said, his gaze fixed on the rain-slicked street, not on her. "No," she insisted, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and frustration. "This is more than busy. This is what you meant, isn't it? Enemies. This is what you were talking about on the rooftop." "Natalie, let it go." His voice was flat, a command. "I can't. You're not the man You're a ghost. You're here, but you're not. You're looking over your shoulder. You're not sleeping. Talk to me, Vince. Whatever it is. You can talk to me." He finally turned to her. His face was pale, his eyes bruised with exhaustion and something else. Something hard. "Talking to you," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "is what puts you in danger. The less you know, the safer you are." "Safer from what?" she cried. "From business? From people who want your management job? I'm not a child. Vince, don't shut me out. I love you." The words hung in the small, warm space of the car. He hadn't said them, not once. His expression didn't soften. It tightened. He looked at her as if she had just handed him a bomb. "I have to go," he said. He leaned in, but his kiss was a brief, hard press of his lips, a duty, not a passion. "Go home, Natalie. Lock your doors. I'll call you when I can." He left her on the curb, her declaration of love unanswered, her fear turning into a cold, hard knot of dread in her stomach. He was shutting her out, and she wouldn't let him. He had given her a key weeks ago. Not to his home. He didn't have a home. He'd said it was to an apartment he kept, a safe place. A sterile, high-floor apartment in the same building where they'd gone to the roof. She'd never used it. He had always been the one to come to her world. That night, she decided to go to his. She bought groceries, a bottle of wine. She would make him dinner. She would sit him down. She would break through this wall, this work that was taking him from her. She would make him talk. She let herself into the apartment. It was dark. The air was still. It didn't smell like him. It didn't smell like anything. It was a showroom. Gray sofa, glass table, black countertops, no photos, no books, no life. "Vince," she called out, her voice swallowed by the thick carpet. He wasn't there. A cold disappointment washed over her. She put the groceries on the counter. The silence here was different from the silence in her apartment. This was an empty, sterile quiet. It felt wrong. She wandered through the space, looking for any sign of him, a stray jacket, a pair of shoes. Nothing. She found the study, a simple room, a large, dark wood desk, a high-backed leather chair. It was immaculate. She ran her fingers along the desk. A laptop, closed, a single sheet of paper with a column of numbers. Meaningless to her. She was about to leave when she saw it. Behind the desk, a section of the wall, designed to look like a built-in bookcase, was not quite flush. It was open, just a crack. He must have left in a hurry. Her heart was hammering. This was it. This was what he was hiding. She knew she shouldn't. She knew it was a betrayal of his trust. But he had betrayed hers first, by shutting her out. She pushed the panel. It swung open silently, revealing not a closet, but a room. It was a small, windowless space, and the smell of gun oil and old paper hit her instantly. She stepped inside. Her hand flew to her mouth. One wall was lined with weapons. Not just handguns, rifles, shotguns, tactical gear. It was an arsenal, organized and gleaming, hanging on a steel pegboard. Another wall was stacked, floor to ceiling, with black duffel bags. She unzipped one. It was full of cash, bundles of $100 bills, wrapped in paper bands. She looked at the other bags. There were dozens of them. It wasn't just money. It was a fortune. It was impossible. But the worst was the table in the center of the room. It was covered in documents, spreadsheets, ledgers, and maps. Maps of Harborview, maps of the port. Sections were circled in red ink, with names. Navarro territory, do not enter, consignment, Pier 7, Donahue, K, low level, no contact. Her own name wasn't there, but Kyle's was. She picked up a ledger. It wasn't business. It was a list of payments, of shipments, of names she recognized from the seediest parts of town. This wasn't management. This was control. He wasn't a boss. He was the boss. The man who had kissed her, who had held her while she cried, who had bought her mother a humidifier, was the Mafia. He was the shadow that ran Harborview, the man everyone was terrified of. The enemies weren't rivals. They were gangs. The bar fight hadn't been a fight. It had been. She didn't want to think what it had been. She backed away, her hands shaking, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She felt stupid. She felt naive. She felt used. "You weren't supposed to see this," she screamed, spinning around. Vincent was standing in the doorway of the study, his face a mask of cold, exhausted fury. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the open, hidden door. "You left it open," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My mistake." He walked past her, into the vault, and began gathering papers from the table, his movements precise and angry. "Vince, who are you?" He didn't stop. "You know who I am." "No," she said, backing away, her hands held up as if to ward him off. "I know Vince. I know a man who drinks bad coffee and walks me home. I don't know this." She gestured wildly at the guns. "The money, this is, what is this?" "It's my life. Natalie." He finally looked at her. His eyes were dead. The coldness she'd seen in the diner, the lethal ice. It was back, and it was directed at her. You lied to me," she stammered, tears of terror and betrayal welling. "All this time, the management, the enemies, you let me believe it was just business. It is business," he snapped. "My business. This isn't business. This is a war. The fire at the docks, the man you beat on my street, Kyle's hand, you did that. You broke his hand. He hit you." He said it as if it explained everything, as if it were a simple equation. "He hit you, so I broke him." "You don't get to do that," she shrieked. "You don't get to play God. You're a criminal. You're the Mafia." He stopped, his hands full of ledgers. He stared at her. "I never lied to you, Natalie," he said, his voice dropping to that terrifying, soft growl. "Not once. You built a fantasy. You saw what you wanted to see. You never asked the right questions." The words hit her harder than Kyle's slap. He was right. She had been so desperate for a savior, for someone safe, that she had willfully ignored every red flag, the money, the violence, the secrecy. She had brushed it all off. "I feel sick," she whispered, leaning against the doorframe. I let you touch me. I slept with you, and you're a monster." His face, which had been hard and cold, fractured. For just a second, she saw the man from the rooftop, the man from her bed, pained, haunted. "Go home, Natalie," he said, his voice thick. What? "Take your groceries. Go home. Go back to the diner. Go back to your life. Forget you ever saw this. Forget you ever met me. Just like that. You're breaking up with me?" He slammed the ledgers onto the table. "Breaking up? You think this is a game? You think we're a normal couple? Look at this room. This is who I am. This is the blood I was born into. There is no us. Natalie, there is this, and there is you, and the two can never touch. I let them touch. I let myself, and I was weak. I was stupid, and I almost got you killed. I don't understand." "The car that followed you," he said, stepping toward her. She flinched, and his face twisted in pain. "The men in the diner, they are the Navarro family, and they are not business rivals. They are trying to kill me. They are trying to take my city, and they saw me with you. They know you are my weakness. The only reason you are alive is because I am letting you go." He grabbed her arm, his grip firm, and pulled her out of the study, out of the apartment, into the hallway. "Vince, wait!" she cried, stumbling. "The key," he said, holding his hand out. "What? My key, give it to me." Sobbing, she fumbled in her pocket and dropped it into his palm. He closed his fist around it. "Go," he said. "Marco is downstairs. He'll take you home. He's one of my men. He'll keep you safe. I don't... Vince, please." "Vince is dead," he said, his voice hollow. "Vince was a fucking fantasy. I am Vincent Romano, and you will never see me again. Now go, before I change my mind." He shut the door in her face. The lock clicked. She was left in the silent, empty hallway. The smell of gun oil on her clothes, her heart shattered. The next 3 days were a waking nightmare. She went to work. She smiled at customers. She came home and tended to her mother. But she was hollow. The safety he had given her was a lie, but the absence of it was a crushing, physical weight. She was truly alone now. And she was terrified. She saw them, the men in cars. They weren't hiding anymore. They were watching her. Not Vince's men, other men with hard, cruel faces, the Navarros. She knew they were the Navarros. They were watching her apartment. They were parked across from the diner. They were waiting, on the 4th day. As she was walking the 2 blocks from the bus stop to her apartment, a figure stepped out of an alley, blocking her path. It was Kyle. "Kyle," she breathed, her hand flying to her chest. He looked terrible. His face was thin. his eyes paranoid and bloodshot. His left hand was still in a dirty, misshapen cast. "So," he spat, his voice a ragged whisper, "he dumped you. The big shot. The man in black. Get out of my way, Kyle. He left you, just like I said he would. Left you right back here in the gutter with the rest of us." He laughed, a high, cracked sound. "Leave me alone." She tried to push past him, but he grabbed her good arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "He broke my hand. Nat," he whispered, his face inches from hers. "Broke it in 3 places. And my leg, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. He told me, stay away from her. Let go of me. But he's not here now, is he?" His eyes were wild. "He's gone, and you're all alone. And you're going to pay for what you did to me. You're going to be mine again. What's his is mine." He yanked her toward the alley. She screamed, "Get your hand off her!" A man stepped out of a parked car, a man she didn't recognize, but who moved with the same silent, deadly grace as Vincent. He was one of his. He hadn't left her. Kyle froze, his eyes widening in terror. He shoved Natalie to the ground and sprinted, disappearing down the alley, scrambling over a chain-link fence. The man didn't chase him. He walked over to Natalie, who was sobbing on the pavement, and helped her up. "You're okay, Miss Moore," he said, his voice respectful. "We've got you. Let's get you inside." "He's still watching me," she whispered, her head spinning. "Vince, he's still." "The boss takes care of his own," the man said simply. He walked her to her door and stood in the hallway until she had locked it. Kyle, meanwhile, was running. He was running on pure, uncut terror. Romano's men were still on her. He'd never be able to get to her. He had been threatened, broken and humiliated. He needed revenge, and he knew just who to sell his information to. 2 nights later, Natalie finished her shift. The man who had saved her was parked in his usual spot. He gave her a subtle nod. She was safe. She started her walk home, her head down. A black van without windows screeched around the corner. It jumped the curb, blocking her path before she could even scream. 2 men were out. Her bodyguard was already drawing his weapon, but a second car, a dark sedan, slammed into his, crushing the door. Gunshots, 2, 3, sharp cracks in the night. A hand, covered in a black glove, clamped over Natalie's mouth. A strong arm wrapped around her waist, lifting her off her feet. She was thrown into the back of the van. The door slammed. Darkness. She was gagged, her hands tied behind her back with a zip tie that cut into her wrists. The van smelled of rust and gasoline. She was sobbing, choking on the cloth in her mouth. After what felt like an hour, they stopped. She was dragged out, into a cold, damp space, a warehouse. It smelled of brine and dead fish. They tied her to a wooden chair. A single, bare bulb hanging from the ceiling illuminated the vast, empty space. "She's pretty, huh?" a voice said from the shadows. "I see why Romano kept her so close." A man stepped into the light. He was wiry, with weasel-like eyes. She recognized him, the man from the diner, the one she'd called Vince, Dad, to protect. "Remember me, sweetheart?" he sneered. "Your father isn't here to save you now." The men laughed. They talked around her, as if she wasn't there. They talked about Vincent. They talked about the raid he'd stopped. They talked about how this was their leverage. "Call him," the weasel said. "What do we tell him?" "Tell him. Tell him we have his property. And if he ever wants to see her breathe again, he'll surrender the port, all of it." Natalie's terror was so complete it was paralyzing. This was it. This was the business. This was the end. She heard one of the men make a call. Then, another man approached her. He was holding a small, digital recorder. "He's not answering," the man said. "He's probably in his hole. Then leave him a message." Weasel said. He grabbed Natalie by the hair, yanking her head back. He ripped the gag from her mouth. "Scream," he ordered. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. He pressed the muzzle of a cold gun to her temple. "I said, scream." She screamed, a high, terrified, broken sound that echoed in the vast, empty warehouse. "Vince, Vince, help me, please." The man holding the recorder smiled. "That'll do." Vincent was in his soundproof office, the one in the back of the Sicilian restaurant. He was staring at a map a glass of brandy untouched beside him. He hadn't slept in 4 days. He had countered the Navarro raid, but it had cost him. 2 men were in the hospital. The police were sniffing around, and he had cut out his own heart and sent it away. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. A new message. He picked it up. He pressed play. He heard the echo of a warehouse. He heard a man's voice. "That'll do." And then he heard her. "Vince! Vince! Help me! Please!" The glass in his hand shattered. Brandy and blood spilled across the map. He didn't feel it. He didn't breathe. The walls of his soundproof room, the fortress he had built around himself, dissolved. The world didn't just stop. It ceased to exist. There was only her voice and the sound of her terror. It was the only sound in the universe. For 2 seconds, the world was just her scream. Then the silence that followed was louder. Vincent stood up. The shards of the broken glass crunched under his boot. He did not wipe the blood and brandy from his hand. He looked at Marco, who had been standing, forgotten, by the door. "Get the crew," Vincent said. His voice was not a voice. It was the sound of a glacier cracking. It was a flat, dead, inhuman calm. "Boss," Marco said, his face pale. "We need a plan. It's a trap. You know it is. They want you. They'll be dug in." "I know," Vincent said. He walked to a locked cabinet and opened it, pulling out a heavy, matte black handgun. He checked the magazine. His movements fluid and economical. "They're at the old canning factory on Pier 9, the one they tried to burn last month." "How do you know?" "Because it's what I would do. It's isolated. It's a kill box." He slid the gun into the holster under his arm. "They want a war. They want me to surrender the port. They think they have leverage." "They do have leverage, boss. They have her." Vincent turned to his most trusted man. The calm was gone. In its place was a cold, white-hot void that sucked all the air from the room. "She is not leverage. Marco, she's the only thing. You bring me 10 men, the 10 best. You bring me every weapon we have that can be carried. We are not negotiating. We are not surrendering. We are ending the Navarro family. Tonight. Boss, if we go in heavy, they'll kill her before we get through the door. They're going to kill her anyway," Vincent stated, his voice hollow. "They can't let her live, not after this. They made a mistake. They think they're holding my weakness, but they're not. They're holding my rage." He walked out of the room, Marco at his heels. He did not care about the trap. He did not care about his life. He had already lost it when he'd shut that apartment door. He was just a ghost, and he had one last piece of work to do. He was willing to die. He just had to get her back first. The warehouse was freezing. The damp cold from the river seeped into Natalie's bones. The single bulb overhead hummed. The man with the weasel face, the one they called Leon, was pacing in front of her. "So, your boyfriend's not answering his phone," Leon sneered, taking a long drag from a cigarette. "Maybe he already replaced you. He's a big shot, right? The king of Harborview? He's probably got girls all over town." Natalie said nothing. Her mind was racing. After the initial wave of paralyzing terror, something else had kicked in, a cold, sharp focus. She remembered Vince's words, whispered in the dark after they'd made love. He'd been tracing her arm. "You're so small," he'd murmured. "I don't like it. I don't like that you're fragile." "I'm not fragile," she'd argued. "I'm a waitress. I carry 40 pounds of plates. I deal with men like Kyle." He'd shaken his head. "If you're ever in trouble, you don't fight. You think. You listen. You look for the way out. You make them think you're weaker than you are. You make them comfortable. Then you wait." "Please," she whispered, letting her voice tremble, making it sound weaker than it was. My hands, the plastic, it's cutting me. I think I'm bleeding." Leon laughed. "So bleed." "No, please," she begged, letting a real sob catch in her throat. If Vincey comes, he won't negotiate if I'm damaged. You know him. He likes his things perfect, please." The appeal to his vanity, to his property, worked. Leone's eyes narrowed. He looked at her, then at his men. "She's right," he grunted. idiot. You tied it too tight." He pulled a knife from his pocket and cut the zip tie, replacing it with a length of thick rope. As he re-tied her, she flexed her wrists, her muscles bulging, creating a fraction of an inch of space. He tied the knot, but he was rough, in a hurry. It was a sloppier knot. "And water," she whispered, her eyes cast down. "Please, I'm so thirsty." "Get her some water," Leon snapped at one of his men, a younger kid who looked as scared as she was, "and shut her up." She drank the water, her mind counting. 4 men in the room with her. Leon, the young one, and 2 others playing cards by the door. She'd heard at least 2 more outside. 6, maybe 7. They were waiting. They were confident. They were stupid. They were comfortable. The assault was not an assault. It was an execution. Vincent's crew of 10 moved in 2 teams. They didn't use the doors. They came in through the roof and the flooded drainage tunnels beneath the pier. The 2 guards outside were dead before they could even make a sound. Vincent and Marco were the first ones inside, dropping from a skylight into the high rafters, silent as spiders. Vincent hung in the shadows, his eyes scanning the pool of light below. He saw her. She was tied to the chair. Her face was bruised, her hair matted. She was alive. A white-hot relief surged through him, so powerful it almost made him black out. It was immediately followed by a rage so profound, so absolute, that the world went red at the edges. He saw Leon. He saw the others. 4, just as he'd expected. He raised his hand, a silent signal. Marco and 2 others took positions. Leon was pacing, checking his phone. "Where the hell is he? He should be begging by now." "Maybe he ain't coming," one of the card players said, laughing. "Oh, he's coming," Vincent's voice said. It came from everywhere, from the darkness above them. Leon and his men spun around, their guns drawn, firing wildly at the shadows. "Who's there? Show yourself, Romano." That was their mistake. The gunshots were the signal. From 3 different directions, Vincent's team opened fire. It wasn't a firefight, it was a slaughter. The 2 card players were cut down instantly. The young kid who had given Natalie water yelped and dropped his weapon, hiding behind a stack of crates. Natalie screamed as the first shots rang out, the sound of the gunfire deafening in the enclosed space. Leon grabbed her. He yanked her out of the chair, the wood scraping, and held her in front of him. The muzzle of his gun pressed hard against her temple. "Romano!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "I've got her. You hear me? One more shot and I'll blow her head off. Show yourself now." The shooting stopped. A terrible, heavy silence fell. "Let her go." "Leon," Vincent's voice said. This time, it came from the ground. He stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, not 20 feet away. He was alone. His hands were empty, held at his sides. "Vince," Natalie cried, sobbing. "Stay still." "Natalie," Vincent said. His eyes locked on her. They were calm. They were the color of the harbor in winter. "Drop your weapons, Romano!" Leon yelled, his hand shaking. "All of you, or I swear to God." "You swear to God," Vincent repeated, taking a slow step forward. "You put your hands on her. You brought her here. You put a gun to her head, and you think you get to walk away. I'll do it. I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," Vincent said. "Natalie," her hands still tied, but looser now, remembered. "Make them comfortable." She suddenly went limp, her knees buckling, her full weight dropping. "No, I'm fainting," she choked out. Leon, caught off guard, stumbled, his balance thrown. He instinctively tried to hold her up, his grip on her shifting, the gun moving a precious 6 inches from her temple. It was all Vincent needed. He moved. He was not the man she knew. He was a blur. In his hand, a knife he'd had in his boot. He threw it. It wasn't a wild throw. It was a precise, calculated strike. The knife crossed the distance and embedded itself deep in Leon's shoulder. The one holding the gun. Leon screamed, a high, thin sound, his fingers spasming open. The gun clattered to the floor. Vincent was on him, his own gun now in his hand. He didn't shoot. He slammed the butt of the pistol into Leon's face. Once, twice. Leon collapsed in a heap. Vincent didn't look at him again. He was already at Natalie, his hands cutting the ropes. She was free. She launched herself at him, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body shaking in violent, uncontrollable sobs. She was alive. He was here. He caught her. His arms wrapping around her like steel bands, crushing her to his chest. He wasn't the cold killer. He was Vince. He buried his face in her hair, his own body trembling. "You're safe," he whispered, his voice thick, kissing her forehead, her cheek, her hair. "You're safe now. I've got you. I've got you." She was bruised. Her cheek was dark, her lips split. He saw the red, raw marks on her wrists. His rage came back, cold and quick. He started to turn toward Leone. "No," Natalie whispered, clutching him. "Don't, please. Just get me out of here. Please, Vince, take me home." He looked at her, his jaw tight. He nodded. Marco appeared. "Boss, clean this up, the one who gave her water. Let him go. The rest, end it. The Navarros are done." "Boss, we've got incoming," another man yelled from the door. "Police! Sirens! 2 minutes." "Go," Vincent said to his men. He scooped Natalie into his arms, as if she weighed nothing, and ran. He didn't take the door. He ran to a black, windowless maintenance tunnel. They plunged into the darkness, the sound of the approaching sirens fading behind them. The house was deep in the woods, miles outside of Harborview, a place she never knew existed. It was small, made of dark wood and stone, and a fire was already burning in the hearth. Marco had driven them, the ride a silent, shaking blur, before disappearing back into the night. Natalie was in shock. She hadn't said a word. She just sat on the plush rug in front of the fire, wrapped in a blanket. Vincent was a ghost, a whirlwind of care. He brought a bowl of warm water and a first aid kit. He knelt in front of her. "This will sting," he said, his voice quiet. It was the same thing she had said to him. His large, rough hands were impossibly gentle. He cleaned the cut on her lip, his touch a feather. He dabbed antiseptic on the rope burns on her wrists, his face tight with a pain that was not his own. She just watched him, her eyes wide, unblinking. When he was done, he ran a bath for her. He helped her out of her torn, filthy clothes and into the hot water. She was numb, a doll. He washed her hair, his fingers massaging her scalp, his movements slow and careful, as if she were a priceless, shattered thing he was trying to put back together. He dressed her in a soft, thick cotton robe that smelled of cedar and sat her on the sofa. He put a glass of brandy in her hand. "Drink." She drank. The fire burned in her throat, bringing her back to life. He didn't sit with her. He pulled a chair to the front door, sat down, and laid his handgun on the small table beside him. And he watched her. He didn't speak. He just guarded her. He watched her until her eyes finally, mercifully closed, and she fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. She woke to the smell of coffee. Morning light was streaming through the windows. She was on the sofa, covered in 2 thick blankets. He was in the same chair, by the door. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face a mask of exhaustion. The gun was still on the table. He had saved her. He had become a monster to save her. She sat up, the blanket pooling in her lap. The shock was gone. In its place was a vast, terrifying, beautiful clarity. "You told me to go," she said. Her voice was a dry croak. He looked at her. The relief in his eyes was so profound it was painful. She was talking. She was hurt. "I told you to be safe," he corrected, his voice rough. You walked away. You broke my heart. Better than letting them stop it." "Why?" she asked, the tears welling up, hot and fast. "Why did you come? You knew it was a trap. I heard your men. You could have lost everything. You could have died." He stood up. He walked over to her, his movements slow, as if he were afraid she would bolt. He crouched in front of her, so his eyes were level with hers. He took her hands, his bandaged ones covering hers. "Yes," he said. "Why," she whispered, a tear rolling down her bruised cheek. "Because I can lose everything else," he confessed, his voice breaking. "The port, the money, this whole goddamn city, it's just stuff. I can lose my life. I was ready to, but not you. Natalie, I can't lose you." She choked on a sob. It was the truth. It was the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. He hadn't come for his property. He hadn't come for leverage. He had come for her. She cried, not in fear but in recognition. This was it. This was love. It wasn't the safe, quiet fantasy she'd wanted. It was this terrible, violent, beautiful man who would burn the entire world to the ground, and himself with it, just to keep her safe. She leaned forward, and her hands, the ones he had just tended, came up to cup his face. She touched the cut over his eye, the bruise high on his cheekbone. He was her monster. He was her protector. He was hers. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing, a single, broken sigh escaping him. She kissed him. It was not the desperate kiss of their first night. It was not the passionate kiss on the rooftop. It was slow. It was deep. It was a promise. It was raw with desperation, but also with a profound, unshakable safety. He lifted her, one arm under her legs, the other around her back, and carried her into the bedroom. He laid her on the bed, and for a long time, just looked at us. Their lovemaking was a reclamation. It was a desperate, shared understanding of who they really were. His touch was not frantic. It was reverent. His hands, the same hands that had ended a war, traced her body as if he were memorizing every line, every curve, every scar, and her touch was not hesitant. It was acceptance. Her fingers traced his old scars, no longer in fear, but in understanding. This was the man he was. This was the man who loved her. It was slow and deep and agonizingly tender. It was a seal. It was the first day of their new, dangerous, and undeniable life. It was the truth. They spent 2 days in that remote house, a pocket of impossible peace while the city churned. The world outside the windows was silent. Just trees and cold, clear blue sky. Inside, there was a quiet tenderness. Vincent was a different man. He was attentive, present. He cooked for her. Simple meals of pasta and bread. He sat with her by the fire, his hand never leaving hers, as if he were afraid she'd dissolve if he let go. She tended to his wounds, the small ones he'd ignored. The cut over his eye was healing, the bruises on his knuckles fading. They spoke very little, but they communicated in the space between words, in the long, shared looks, in the way he would stop what he was doing just to watch her breathe. On the third morning, the peace broke. The man he was, the king, returned. She woke to find him dressed, not in the soft clothes from the house, but in a black suit. He was on the phone, his back to her, his voice the low, flat baritone of command. No, not a negotiation, a summons, he was saying. He will come. He's arrogant. He'll see it as weakness. Have the restaurant cleared. I want Marco and the 4 best. No one else. This ends. Today. He hung up and turned. He saw her, awake, watching him. The hardness in his eyes softened, but it didn't disappear. You heard, he said. You're going back. It wasn't a question. I'm going to destroy the Navarro family, he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Not just the foot soldiers, the head, the root. I'm going to burn their name out of this city so that no one ever thinks they can touch what is mine again. He walked to her, sitting on the edge of the bed. He took her hands. Which is why you can't be here. Her heart dropped. What? What do you mean? You're sending me away again? I'm giving you the choice I should have given you from the beginning, he said, his gaze unflinching. The choice you had before you saw the man in the vault. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, leather-bound folder. He laid it on the bed. Inside was a passport, a driver's license, a bank book. The name was not Natalie Moore. There is $250,000 in an account in that name, he said, his voice quiet, formal. There is a plane ticket to San Francisco, leaving this afternoon. From there, you can go anywhere. Paris, London, you can go to the best nursing school in the country. You will have a new life, a clean one. You will be safe, and you will never have to see me, or this life, ever again. She stared at the folder. It was freedom. It was the escape she had dreamed of in the diner, the one she'd cried over at her kitchen table. It was safety. It was silence. She looked at him, at the man who had just offered her the world, the man who was preparing to go to war, the man who might not survive the day. "And you?" she whispered. "What happens to you?" "It doesn't matter," he said. "All that matters is that you are safe." She stared at the new, smiling picture of a stranger who looked like her. She saw the life he was offering, a quiet, normal, safe life. The kind of life she had begged the universe for. She closed the folder. She pushed it back across the blanket to him. "No," she said. His brow furrowed. "Natalie, you don't understand. This isn't a game. This is for good. This is the last time. Once you're gone, you can never come back." "I know," she said, her voice shaking, but her resolve like steel. "I'm not that girl anymore. Vince, the one who was afraid of the silence, the one who just wanted to run. You did this. You came for me. You walked into that warehouse knowing you might die. You showed me what love actually is. It's not safe. It's real." She reached up, her hand tracing the healing cut over his eye. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving you." "You would stay?" he asked, his voice rough with a disbelief that broke her heart. "Knowing what I am? Knowing what this world is? You would choose this? The blood? The darkness?" "I'm not choosing the darkness," she said, her eyes locked on his. "I'm choosing you. You who sat with me in the diner. You who bought my mother a humidifier. You who held me while I cried on a rooftop. And you, the man who just declared war. It's all you. You're not two different men. Vince, you're one, and I'm not leaving." She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. "You're not just a stranger anymore." He closed his eyes, a heavy, shuddering breath escaping him. He had offered her an escape, and she had offered him grace. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against his suit, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Then you stay here," he whispered into her hair, his voice thick. "You lock this door. You do not open it, for anyone. Do you understand me? For no one but me." "Be careful," she whispered, clutching him. "I am always careful," he said. He pulled back, his eyes clear and hard again. The king was back. "I am going to work." He kissed her, a hard, brief, possessive kiss that was a promise. Then he turned and walked out of the door, leaving her alone in the quiet house, to wait. The trap was set. Rico Navarro, the head of the family, received the message at noon. Vincent Romano was broken. The kidnapping of the girl had shattered him. He was willing to negotiate. He would cede the northern half of the port, his most valuable territory, in exchange for a truce, a permanent one. Rico laughed. He had known it. The old-timers said Romano was a ghost, a man made of ice. But Rico had found his weakness, a cheap waitress. The meeting was set for 9 at night at Il Corvo, the Sicilian restaurant that was Romano's fortress. Rico saw this as the ultimate act of surrender. Romano was inviting the wolf into his own den. "It's a trap." "Rico," his second-in-command warned. "Of course it's a trap," Rico sneered, loading a gold-plated handgun. "He thinks he's smart. He'll have men in the walls, but he's weak. He's desperate. He's in love. And that makes him stupid. We will go. We will listen to his offer. And when he signs the paper, I will shoot him in the head with his own pen." Rico brought 6 men. He left 4 outside. He and his second walked into the restaurant. It was empty, save for a single table in the center. Candles were lit. 2 glasses, 1 bottle of expensive brandy. Vincent sat at the table, alone. He looked smaller, tired, defeated. He didn't even have a man at the door. "Rico," Vincent said, his voice quiet. He gestured to the other chair. "Thank you for coming." "Romano," Rico said, sitting down. He laid his heavy coat over the back of the chair. He was smiling. He had won. "I'm surprised. I thought you'd have more guards." "We're tired of guards, Rico," Vincent said. He poured him a glass of brandy. "Tired of the war. It's not good for business." "No, I suppose not," Rico said, sipping the brandy. "So, The port. Let's talk. The northern piers. 7 through 12, they're yours. Vincent pushed a map across the table. You'll have full control of all European shipments. Rico's eyes widened. It was more than he'd dreamed. Just like that? What's the catch? No catch, Vincent said. Just peace. You leave. You leave her out of it. You leave my life alone. You take the port, and we never see each other again. Rico leaned back, savoring the moment. He had him. He had broken the unbreakable Vincent Romano. It's a good deal, he said, nodding slowly. A very good deal. But I have a counteroffer. Oh? I take the port, Rico said, his smile turning cruel. And I take everything else. Your city, your name, your girl? I think I'll pay her a visit after this, just to finalize the terms. Vincent looked at him. The mask of the defeated man didn't slip. He just watched him. You shouldn't have said that. And you, Rico said, shouldn't have come alone. He pulled his gun from under his jacket, leveling it at Vincent's chest. It's over. Romano. You're right, Vincent said. You didn't come alone either. Rico frowned. What? You brought my men with you, Vincent said. The two men who had been standing guard outside the restaurant for Rico suddenly appeared at the main door. Behind them, Marco. Rico's eyes went wide. He looked at his second-in-command, the one man he'd brought to the table. The man was just sitting there, his hands on the table, not moving. Antonio? Rico hissed. Do something. Antonio, his second, slowly picked up his own brandy glass. He's right, Rico. You shouldn't have said that. The boss. He doesn't like it when people are sloppy. Betrayal, cold and complete, dawned on Rico's face. You all work for him. Not all, Vincent said, standing up. Just the ones who matter. The ones who are tired of your arrogance. The ones who see you're willing to burn the whole city down for a girl. Who wasn't even yours. Rico screamed, a sound of pure rage, and fired his gun. The shot was deafening. It hit Vincent, high in the shoulder, spinning him back. He grunted, slamming against the wall. Marco and the other men raised their weapons, but Vincent held up a hand. No, he's mine. Rico fired again, wildly, but Vincent was already moving. He kicked the table over, sending glass and brandy flying. Rico scrambled back, trying to get a clear shot. Vincent moved through the chaos, ignoring the fire in his shoulder. He was on Rico in a second. It wasn't a fight, it was a conclusion. He disarmed him, his movements precise, brutal. He slammed Rico against the bar, the sound of bone hitting wood echoing in the room. It's over, Vincent said, his voice a low growl. He was bleeding, a dark stain spreading on his white shirt. Rico, his face a mask of terror, saw his gun on the floor. He lunged for it. Marco stepped forward, firing once, a single clean shot. Rico Navarro collapsed, his eyes open and unseeing. Silence. Marco rushed to Vincent, grabbing his arm. Boss, you're hit. You're bleeding. It's just a scratch. Vincent panted, leaning against the bar. He looked at Antonio, Rico's former second. It's done. Clean this up. All of it. The family is yours. You answer to Marco now. Harborview is ours again. Quietly. Understand? Antonio, pale but composed, just nodded. Quietly, boss. We understand. Vincent clutched his shoulder. Get me out of here. Take me. Take me home. 6 months later, the Harborview diner was closed, boarded up. A for lease sign hung in the window. But 2 blocks down, a new cafe had opened. It was called The Haven. It was warm, the walls a soft cream, the smell of fresh-baked bread and rich, dark coffee filling the air. It was busy. Natalie moved through the tables, a green apron tied around her waist. She was smiling, laughing with a customer. She looked healthy. Her hair was longer. Her eyes, once haunted by exhaustion, were bright. She went behind the counter, checking a pot of soup before opening a thick nursing textbook. Her mother, breathing easily, was sitting in a comfortable armchair in the corner, holding court with 2 other seniors, a plate of cookies in front of them. Vincent Romano had stepped back. He was still the boss, But he was no longer the king. The day-to-day operations, the loud work, was left to Marco and Antonio. Vincent had moved into a legitimate shipping office, a glass-walled building that overlooked the port he now controlled completely. He had become the man in the shadows, the true manager, just as he'd always said. The bell on the cafe door chimed. Natalie looked up, and a radiant smile broke across her face. He was standing in the doorway, shrugging off the rain from a tailored black coat. He looked relaxed. The severe lines around his mouth and eyes had softened. He smiled at her. It was a real, easy smile. She untied her apron, tossing it on the counter, and ran to him. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off her feet, his kiss warm and familiar. It was a quiet kiss, the kind shared by people who have nothing left to prove. "You're late," she whispered against his lips. "The union meeting ran long," he murmured, setting her down. His hand slid around her waist, pulling her close. "Marco talks too much." She laughed, leaning her head against his chest. She could feel the hard, solid muscle, and she could feel the faint, reassuring bump of the holster under his arm. She pulled back, a teasing glint in her eye. "Still dangerous?" Vincent looked down at her, his dark gray eyes full of a love so deep it was bottomless. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. "Only for the ones who try to take you from me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We hope you enjoyed the journey of Natalie and Vincent. We would love to hear from you, so please drop a comment and let us know where in the world you're listening from. Your support means everything to us. Please don't forget to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more tales of love and danger. Let us know what you thought of this story in the comments.